On this edition of the Sundown series, we will be talking about Levittown, New York. Levittown, formerly Island Trees, is a hamlet and census-designated place in the town of Hempstead in Nassau County, New York on Long Island. It is located halfway between the villages of Hempstead and Farmingdale. As of the 2010 census, the CDP had a total population of 51,881, making it the most populated CDP in Nassau County and the second most populated CDP on Long Island, only behind Brentwood. Levittown gets its name from its builder, the firm of Levitt & Sons, Incorporated, founded by Abraham Levitt on August 7, 1929, which built the district as a planned community for returning World War II veterans between 1947 and 1951. Sons William and Alfred served as the company's president and chief architect and planner, respectively. Levittown was the first truly mass-produced suburb and is widely regarded as the archetype for post-war suburbs throughout the country. William Levitt, who was assumed control of Levitt & Sons in 1954, is considered the father of modern suburbia in the United States. There have been multiple proposals in the past to incorporate Levittown as either a village or as the third city in Nassau County. The building firm Levitt & Sons, headed by Abraham Levitt and his two sons William and Alfred, built 4 planned communities called Levittown in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. The Levittown in New York was the first. Additionally, Levitt & Sons design are featured prominently in the older portion of Buffalo Grove, Illinois, Vernon Hills, Illinois, Willingboro Township in New Jersey, the Bel Air section of Bowie, Maryland, and the Greenbrier section of Fairfax, Virginia. I'm familiar with the last two. Levittown was designed to provide a large amount of housing at a time when there was a high demand for affordable family homes. This suburban development will become a symbol of the American dream as it allowed thousands of families to become homeowners. As well as a symbol of the American dream, Levittown also will become a symbol of racial segregation in the United States due to Clause 25 of the Standard Lease Agreement signed by the first residents of Levittown, who had an option to buy their homes. This restrictive covenant stated in capital letters in bold type that the house could not be used or occupied by any person other than members of the Caucasian race. Such discriminatory housing standards were consistent with government policies of the time. The Federal Housing Administration allowed developers to justify segregation within public housing. The FHA only offered mortgages to non-mixed developments, which discouraged developers from creating racially integrated housing. Before the sale of Levittown home began, the sale agents were aware that no applicants from black families would be accepted. As a result, American veterans who wished to purchase a home in Levittown were unable to do so if they were black. William Levitt attempted to justify their decision to only sell homes to white families by saying that it was in the best interest for business. He claimed their actions were not discriminatory but intended to maintain the value of their properties. That sounds a lot like today. You know how they always say if black people come into a certain area, they'll bring the property value down? As you can see, it had its humble beginnings. The company explained that it was not possible to reduce racial segregation while they were attempting to reduce the housing shortage. Levitt said, "As a Jew, I have no room in my heart for racial prejudice, but the plain fact is that most whites prefer not to live in mixed communities. This attitude may be wrong morally and someday it may change. I hope it will." The Levitts explained that they would open up applications to blacks after they had sold as many homes to white people as possible. They believed that potential white buyers would not want to buy a house in Levittown if they were aware they would have black neighbors. Though the Levitts were Jewish, they did not wish to sell homes to Jewish families either. Despite this, by 1960, although it was still a completely white suburb, the population of Levittown was roughly a third Jewish, with the remainder about a third Roman Catholic and a third Protestant. An opposition group was formed, the Committee to End Discrimination in Levittown, to protest restricted sale of Levittown homes and to push for an integrated community. In 1948, the United States Supreme Court in Shelley versus Kramer declared that property deeds stipulating racial segregation were unenforceable as law and contrary to public policy. Only well after the 1954 racial integration decisions, including the Brown versus the Board of Education, was Levittown racially integrated, and even as late as the 1990 census, only a tiny fraction of the community was non-white, and a condition that still exists. So that was some interesting information right there when it came to this particular town. And this is one of the few times that I did in New York that actually went into detail like this. And all the towns that I covered in New York were suburban towns. These are not like some ran down towns by any measure of the word. They don't have a population count as of right now for more recent times, because this is a whole county that they're talking about here. But their population racial breakdown is 88.9% white, 11.5% Hispanic or Latin of any race, 5.7% Asian, 0.9% Black, 0.1% Native American, and 0.2% Pacific Islander. So that's pretty much all I have for this particular town right here. Y'all let me know if you've ever heard of this town. If you're in New York, if you ever heard of this town before. And this pretty much concludes this edition of the Sundown series for the state of New York. Like, we only had three towns or cities or villages, whatever you want to call it, to cover for the state. So tune in next week when we will be headed to our next state.